Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, land of cheesesteaks, Hershey's chocolate, and the Liberty Bell. But behind that postcard image, there's another Pennsylvania that doesn't make it into the tourism brochures. We're talking about towns where the infrastructure is crumbling, poverty rates rival developing nations, and entire communities are basically hanging on by a thread. Today, we're counting down 10 Pennsylvania towns with third-world living conditions. Number 3 is shocking. Number 10, Duquesne. Welcome to Duquesne. Population around 5,100, where the unemployment rate tells you pretty much everything you need to know. This Allegheny County borough sits along the Monongahela River, and once upon a time, it was a steel town that actually meant something. Now, it's one of those places where the past looks a whole lot better than the present. The big problem here isn't just that jobs are scarce, though trust me, they are. The unemployment rate is one of the highest in the entire state. Nearly 29% of residents live below the poverty line, and when you walk through town, you can see it. Vacant storefronts, homes that desperately need repairs, streets with potholes that have probably been there since the steel mills closed. The median household income sits at around $41,000, which is significantly below both the state and national averages. But here's the kicker. It's not like there's a low cost of living to make up for those wages. You're still paying Pennsylvania taxes, Pennsylvania utility rates, Pennsylvania everything. You're just doing it on a lot less money. What happened? Same story you'll hear throughout this list. The steel industry collapsed, and Duquesne never recovered. When the mills shut down, they took the town's economic foundation with them. The people who could afford to leave, left. The ones who stayed are making do with whatever opportunities remain, and those opportunities are pretty limited. The impact on families has been devastating. Parents who once had stable manufacturing jobs now piece together multiple part-time positions, if they can find work at all. The kind of benefits their parents had, health insurance, pensions, job security, those are ancient history. Instead, it's gig work, retail jobs that don't offer full-time hours, and a constant struggle to make rent and put food on the table. The borough's public services have been cut to the bone. With such a weak tax base, the local government is constantly making impossible decisions. Do we fix the water main or repair the roads? Do we fund the fire department or the recreation programs for kids? There's never enough money for both, so something always suffers. Community organizations try to fill the gaps, but they're running on donations and volunteer time, neither of which is abundant in a town this poor. Food banks, after-school programs, senior services, they all exist on a shoestring, doing what they can but never quite meeting the level of need. Number 9. Uniontown. Uniontown, down in Fayette County, has a population of about 9,800 people, and roughly 26% of them are living in poverty. The median household income here is $35,451. That's one of the lowest in Pennsylvania. Let that sink in for a minute. The downtown area tells the story. Buildings that should have been condemned years ago are still standing somehow. The infrastructure is aging, and there's just not enough money in the city coffers to fix everything that needs fixing. Roads, sewers, public buildings, they're all showing their age. One resident summed it up pretty bluntly. There's just nothing here anymore. The young people who can leave, they leave. The rest of us are stuck. Education levels don't help. Only a fraction of adults here have bachelor's degrees, which limits job opportunities even when there are jobs available. And in Uniontown, there aren't many jobs available. The unemployment rate hovers above the state average, and the types of jobs that are available tend to be low-wage service positions. The town's had its struggles with crime too. When poverty hits this hard, crime rates typically follow. It's not that people in Uniontown are inherently worse than anywhere else. It's that desperation makes people do desperate things. What's particularly frustrating about Uniontown is that it's not isolated like some rural Pennsylvania communities. It's relatively accessible, with decent highway connections. But that accessibility hasn't translated into economic opportunity. Businesses don't want to invest in an area with such high poverty and low consumer spending. It's another vicious cycle. No investment means no jobs. No jobs means continued poverty. Continued poverty means no investment. The tax base has been shrinking for years, which means the city has less and less money to work with. Essential services get cut. Infrastructure maintenance gets deferred. The quality of life declines, which pushes more people to leave if they can, which further shrinks the tax base. It's a downward spiral that seems impossible to escape. Number 8. Clairton. Clairton, another Allegheny County borough with about 6,100 residents, ranks as one of Pennsylvania's poorest communities, with a poverty rate around 30%. The median household income sits at roughly $40,000, making it one of the lowest earning communities in the state. This former mill town faces the same post-industrial challenges that plague so many western Pennsylvania communities. When the steel industry collapsed, Clairton lost its economic engine. The good-paying jobs disappeared, and nothing substantial came back to replace them. The unemployment rate here consistently ranks among the highest in Pennsylvania. Finding steady work is a challenge, and even when people do find jobs, they're often part-time or low-wage positions that don't provide enough to support a family. The physical deterioration is visible everywhere. Homes need major repairs that owners can't afford. Public infrastructure is aging and inadequate. The borough struggles with the same budget constraints that affect all the towns on this list. Too many needs, not enough revenue. Schools face enormous obstacles. When the majority of your students are living in poverty, when families are struggling just to survive, educational achievement becomes exponentially harder. Teachers do their best, but they're fighting systemic problems that start long before kids walk through the school doors. Number 7, Shamokin. Shamokin, in Northumberland County, has a population of about 6,900 people and a poverty rate of approximately 27.4% according to the most recent data, though some sources have reported figures as high as 35% in past years. Either way, we're talking about a community where more than 1 in 4 people are living below the federal poverty line. The median household income is around $36,000, which is drastically below the state average. The unemployment rate has consistently remained elevated at around 8 to 9%, indicating that job opportunities are extremely limited. This was once a thriving coal mining town. When Pennsylvania's anthracite coal industry was booming in the late 1800s and early 1900s, Shamokin prospered. Mines employed thousands, the downtown bustled with activity. But when the coal industry collapsed, Shamokin collapsed with it. The town never transitioned to anything else. Unlike some former mining communities that found new industries or reinvented themselves, Shamokin just declined. And that decline has been going on for generations now. Only about 14% of adults in Shamokin hold bachelor's degrees or higher, which severely limits access to better-paying jobs, even when those jobs exist, which in Shamokin, they largely don't. The lack of education, combined with the lack of opportunity, creates a trap that's almost impossible to escape. The housing stock is old and deteriorating. Many homes were built in the coal boom era and haven't been properly maintained in decades. The cost of living is low, which provides some relief. But you're talking about cheap housing because nobody wants to live there, not because it's a great deal. Healthcare access is limited. The nearest quality hospitals are miles away. For a population that includes many elderly residents and people dealing with poverty-related health issues, this lack of access is a serious problem. Number 6, Darby. Darby, in Delaware County, population around 11,000, has a poverty rate that hovers around 33%. That means 1 in 3 people here are living below the federal poverty line. The median household income is approximately $34,000, which in the greater Philadelphia area, where the cost of living isn't exactly cheap, doesn't go far at all. The borough has struggled with deteriorating housing stock for decades. Many homes were built in the early 1900s and haven't been properly maintained. The result? Neighborhoods dotted with properties that are falling apart, sometimes literally. Code violations are common, but many property owners either can't afford repairs or have simply abandoned the properties entirely. Crime is a significant issue in Darby. The combination of poverty, unemployment, and crumbling infrastructure creates conditions where criminal activity flourishes. Residents often talk about feeling unsafe in their own neighborhoods, especially after dark. The school district faces similar challenges to other towns on this list. Underfunded, overcrowded, struggling with student achievement gaps that reflect the broader economic struggles of the community. When kids come to school hungry, when they're dealing with housing instability, when their parents are stressed about basic survival, learning takes a back seat. Public services are stretched thin. Police, fire, emergency medical services, they're all doing more with less. The borough's budget constraints mean there's never enough money to address all the needs, so officials are constantly making impossible choices about what gets funded and what doesn't. The proximity to Philadelphia should be an advantage. It's right there, a major city with jobs and opportunities. But for most Darby residents, Philadelphia might as well be on another planet. Without reliable transportation, without the education or skills for higher-paying jobs, without the resources to relocate even a few miles away, they're trapped in a community that can't provide what they need. The housing crisis in Darby is particularly acute. Landlords who own properties here often don't live in the area and don't maintain their buildings. Tenants, many of whom are living on the edge financially, can't afford to move and often can't force landlords to make repairs. The result is substandard housing that contributes to health problems, particularly for children. There have been attempts at revitalization, but they've been halting and incomplete. A few buildings get renovated, a small business opens, but it's not enough to change the overall trajectory of decline. What Darby needs is massive, sustained investment, and that investment hasn't materialized. Number 5. Monessen. Located just outside Pittsburgh in Westmoreland County, Monessen tells the classic Rust Belt story. Once a thriving steel town with a booming economy in the mid-20th century, Monessen has been in steady decline since the steel industry collapsed in the 1970s and 1980s. The population has plummeted. At its peak, this town was home to a vibrant community. Now it's down to just a few thousand residents, and many of those who remain are elderly, living on fixed incomes that barely cover their needs. The poverty rate is severe, and the median household income is among the lowest in Pennsylvania. When the mills closed, they took everything with them, not just jobs, but the entire economic ecosystem that supported those jobs. The restaurants where workers ate lunch, the stores where they shopped, the businesses that serviced their homes, all of it dried up, and nothing came back to replace it. The lack of investment in Monessen is visible everywhere you look. Homes and businesses are run down, with little to no major improvements in decades. The infrastructure is aging and failing. Roads are in terrible shape, with potholes that damage cars and create safety hazards. Public buildings are deteriorating. Schools here are chronically underfunded. With such a depleted tax base, there's simply not enough money to provide students with the resources they need. Teachers work with outdated materials, buildings need repairs, programs get cut. It's the same story playing out in every aspect of community life. Too many needs, not enough resources. Healthcare access is another major problem. The nearest quality hospitals are miles away, and many residents don't have reliable transportation to get there. For elderly residents or those with chronic health conditions, this lack of access can literally be life-threatening. Number 4. Chester. And here we are at number 4. Chester, Pennsylvania, population around 33,000, is one of the oldest cities in Pennsylvania. William Penn first landed here in 1682. This place has history. It also has a poverty rate of approximately 30.8%, which is more than 2.5 times the national average. The median household income is $39,809. In the greater Philadelphia region, where Chester is located, that's barely subsistence level. But what makes Chester truly shocking isn't just the poverty. It's how concentrated it is. This city has become, in the words of one economist, a repository for the region's poor. Delaware County, which surrounds Chester, has some of the wealthiest suburbs in Pennsylvania. But all the low-cost housing, all the government-subsidized apartments, all the affordable rental options, they're in Chester. Poor families move to Chester because that's where they can afford to live. And once they're there, they're trapped. The schools are among the worst in the state. Job opportunities are limited. Crime is a constant concern. The city's been declared financially distressed, and in 2022, Chester became the 31st city in the United States to declare bankruptcy. Let me say that again. Bankruptcy. The infrastructure here is beyond crumbling. It's failed. During the 1978 Wade Dump fire, a rubber recycling facility and illegal chemical dumping site burned out of control for days, creating multicolored toxic smoke that injured 43 firefighters and caused long-term health problems. The site became a Superfund cleanup area. That's the kind of environmental disaster Chester has dealt with. Crime rates in Chester are staggeringly high. The city consistently ranks among the most dangerous places in Pennsylvania. Residents talk about hearing gunshots regularly, avoiding certain neighborhoods, feeling like they're living in a war zone. One resident said, "You just try to get through each day. You don't plan for the future here, you just survive." The school district was ordered to desegregate in the past, and it's faced continuous challenges ever since. Buildings are outdated, resources are scarce, and the district struggles with all the problems that come with serving an overwhelmingly impoverished student population. Teachers face burnout, students face obstacles that have nothing to do with their abilities, and the system just barely functions. Healthcare access is limited. Many residents rely on emergency rooms for basic medical care because they don't have insurance or can't afford to see a regular doctor. This leads to preventable conditions becoming emergencies, which costs more and results in worse outcomes. What makes Chester so shocking is this. It's not in the middle of nowhere. It's right there, adjacent to some of the wealthiest suburbs in America. You can literally drive from areas where the median household income is 6 figures to Chester in less than 20 minutes. The inequality is stark, visible, and seems almost intentional. It's like the region made a decision that poverty has to exist somewhere, and Chester is where it gets concentrated. The city's attempt to attract new development has been mixed at best. There's Harrah's Philadelphia Casino, Subaru Park, where the Philadelphia Union plays soccer, and some attempts at waterfront development. But these don't translate into opportunities for most Chester residents. The jobs they create are often low wage, and the economic benefits leave the city just as quickly as they arrive. Number 3, Aliquippa. And here we are at number 3, and yes, it is absolutely shocking. Aliquippa is a name that should mean something in American industrial history. At its peak, this Beaver County city had a population of 27,000 and housed the largest steel mill in the world, stretching 7 miles along the Ohio River. 9,000 people worked at the Jones and Laughlin steel mill. The town was prosperous, vibrant, with businesses thriving along Franklin Avenue and families building solid middle-class lives. Then, 1984 happened. LTV Corp., which had taken over Jones and Laughlin, made an announcement. The Aliquippa works would close, laying off about 8,000 workers immediately. The economic devastation was instant and total. Today, Aliquippa's population is down to around 9,000 people. The poverty rate is severe. More than 50% of the population that once lived here is gone. The median household income is a fraction of what it once was. And when you drive through Aliquippa now, you see the ghost of what it used to be. Abandoned buildings line Franklin Avenue, which used to be packed with shoppers. Homes that once housed steel workers and their families sit empty, windows boarded up, structures slowly collapsing. Entire neighborhoods look post-apocalyptic. It's not an exaggeration to say parts of Aliquippa look like a disaster zone. In 1987, Aliquippa became only the second town in Pennsylvania to qualify as a financially distressed community. That designation remains today. The city government has been operating on the edge of insolvency for decades, relying on special grants and loans just to keep basic services running. The infrastructure is failing. Water and sewer systems are outdated and prone to breaks. Roads are in terrible condition. The tax base has eroded to the point where there's almost no money for maintenance or improvements. Public services are skeletal. Crime and drug use have become serious problems. When an entire generation loses their livelihoods, when there's no economic opportunity, when despair sets in, social problems follow. Aliquippa has struggled with all of them. One particularly poignant moment in the city's history came in the late 1980s when veteran steelworkers, who had lost not just their jobs but their pension benefits, gathered at the railroad tunnel entrance of the old plant to protest. They called themselves the Tunnel Rats. Local police had to arrest them for disorderly conduct, and there were tears in officers' eyes as they handcuffed their own family members. That image captures everything about what happened to Aliquippa. A community turning on itself not out of malice, but because desperation left no other choice. The loss wasn't just economic, it was cultural. Aliquippa had been a melting pot, attracting immigrants from all over Europe and African Americans from the South, all coming for those steel mill jobs. The town had a strong sense of community, forged in the shared experience of working in the mills. When the mills closed, that sense of community began to fracture. The few businesses that remain are struggling. There's little foot traffic, little disposable income in the community, and little reason for new businesses to open. Every year, more storefronts close and fewer open to replace them. Young people who grow up in Aliquippa today know the stories about what the town used to be, but they can't imagine it. What they see is abandonment, poverty, and no future. So they leave, continuing the population decline that's been happening for 4 decades. Number 2, McKeesport. And here we are at number 2. McKeesport. This city of roughly 17,000 people along the Monongahela River was once a steel powerhouse. According to multiple sources, McKeesport has consistently been ranked as one of the poorest communities in Pennsylvania, with a poverty rate hovering around 33% in recent years. The median household income is approximately $31,854, the lowest in Pennsylvania. Nearly 1 in 3 residents lives below the poverty line. The unemployment rate is concerning, and the jobs that do exist tend to be low-wage, service sector positions that can't support a family. When Bethlehem Steel closed its operations here, the impact was catastrophic. Thousands of good-paying jobs disappeared practically overnight, and unlike some communities that managed to reinvent themselves, McKeesport never found that second act. The population has been shrinking for decades as young people flee for opportunities elsewhere, leaving behind an aging population with limited resources. The infrastructure in McKeesport is crumbling. We're not talking about minor wear and tear. We're talking about serious systemic failure. Water mains burst regularly. Streets are potholed messes. Public buildings are in disrepair. The city government simply doesn't have the tax revenue to maintain everything, so things keep deteriorating. Crime rates are high. Drug addiction is a serious problem. Abandoned homes and businesses create blight that makes neighborhoods feel dangerous and neglected. It's a vicious cycle. Poverty leads to crime, crime drives away investment, lack of investment perpetuates poverty. One local business owner said, "I've been here my whole life, and I've watched this place just fall apart piece by piece. It breaks your heart." The schools in McKeesport face enormous challenges: high poverty rates among students, aging facilities, limited budgets, teacher shortages. The district is dealing with every possible educational obstacle at once. Student achievement lags, graduation rates are concerning, and the cycle of poverty continues into the next generation. The decline has been so complete that entire neighborhoods have essentially been abandoned. Houses sit vacant for years, eventually becoming havens for squatters or drug activity. The city doesn't have the resources to tear them down, and nobody has the money to fix them up. So they just sit there, deteriorating, bringing down property values for whatever neighbors remain. Public transportation is limited, which creates another barrier for residents trying to access jobs or services outside the city. Many people in McKeesport don't have cars, and even if they could find work in Pittsburgh or other nearby areas, getting there is a challenge. The isolation compounds the poverty. Healthcare is another serious concern. While there are some medical facilities in the area, access to quality care is limited. Many residents rely on emergency rooms for primary care because they lack insurance or can't afford regular doctor visits. This leads to worse health outcomes and higher costs in the long run. The sense of hopelessness in McKeesport is palpable. When you talk to residents, especially older ones who remember what the city used to be, there's a deep sadness. They remember when downtown was bustling, when everyone had jobs, when the future looked bright. Now they see empty storefronts, abandoned homes, and young people leaving as soon as they're able. What makes McKeesport the number 2 town on this list is the combination of factors: the lowest median household income in Pennsylvania, one of the highest poverty rates, severe population loss, crumbling infrastructure, and the complete collapse of what was once a thriving industrial economy. This isn't just a town in decline. It's a town that's been hollowed out, where the American dream has turned into a nightmare for thousands of families who have nowhere else to go. Number 1, Johnstown, honorable mention. Before we wrap up, we need to talk about Johnstown. With a population around 18,000 and a poverty rate that's been reported as high as 38.7% in some studies, though more recent data shows it closer to 31%. Johnstown deserves special mention. That 38.7% figure, if accurate at the time, would have made it one of the poorest cities in America, not just Pennsylvania. This Cambria County city is famous for its floods. The 1889 Johnstown flood killed over 2,200 people when the South Fork Dam failed. The town rebuilt. Then it flooded again in 1936. Rebuilt again. Then 1977 brought another devastating flood, and each time Johnstown got back up. But you can rebuild after a natural disaster. What's harder to rebuild after is an economic disaster. When Bethlehem Steel closed, Johnstown's economy collapsed. The unemployment rate has remained high for decades. Food insecurity affects about a third of the population in America in the 21st century. One community leader said, "We've survived floods that literally wiped us off the map. We can survive this too, but it would be nice to do more than survive." So there you have it. 10 Pennsylvania towns with conditions that rival developing nations, from McKeesport's devastating economic collapse to the shocking poverty concentration in Chester, from the industrial graveyards of Aliquippa to the slow decline of places like Monessen and Darby. These communities represent an America that's often invisible in our national conversation. These aren't just statistics. These are real places with real people trying to build lives under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. They're towns with history, with families that have been there for generations, with residents who care deeply about their communities, but lack the resources to fix what's broken. The fact that these conditions exist in Pennsylvania, a relatively wealthy state in the wealthiest nation on earth, should give us all pause. These towns aren't in some far-off developing country. They're right here, and the people living in them are Americans dealing with third-world conditions in their own backyard. If this video opened your eyes to what's happening in parts of Pennsylvania, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with anyone who needs to see it. The first step to addressing a problem is acknowledging it exists, and these towns definitely exist. They're struggling, they're hurting, and they deserve more than to be forgotten. Thanks for watching. Until next time.